Okay, I think we're good to go. Go ahead, Zoe.
Great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for all joining us today. I hope you're staying safe and healthy during these trying times. Today, we have James Carroll, founder and principal at Secure Network Technologies and chief hacking officer at A-Networks, and Bill Minahan, the founder and CEO of A-Networks, here to provide insight into a hacker's mind, prevalent social engineering threats, and how your business can learn to avoid them. Hopefully, by the end of this webinar, you will know more about how hackers enter your network, as well as how your employees put your business at risk. James and Bill are experts in their own individual fields, as well as a few overlapping ones. Today, they're going to discuss some of the major tactics of social engineering, the consequences of a cyber attack, and how your business can stay safe. Then at the end, we're going to have a live Q&A. If you have any topic-related questions during discussion, please send them in throughout the chat, because we want to make this as useful for you as possible. So if anything pops up that's topic-related, just send them over and we will answer them. So James is a penetration tester, an information security engineer, and an ethical hacker. James has extensive experience breaking security defenses, locating sensitive information inside corporate networks, and exfiltrating that data using methods that go undetected by your average security defenses. He has worked with Fortune 100 companies, professional sports teams, large publicly traded companies, and some of the leading security software vendors to break into their network, steal their data, and expose their security exploits. Thank you for joining us today, James.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. And Bill Minahan has been a leading IT and security expert for the last 25 years. He is a founder and CEO of A-Networks. And in the 80s, he was one of the top hackers in the world. But after college, Bill decided to use his technological gifts for good and founded his first company selling hardware and computers at the age of 22. And he's been helping businesses protect their data ever since. Apart from running A-Networks, Bill is a board member of the Entrepreneurs Organization Boston chapter, an avid scuba diver and instructor, a 10-time grand champion barbecue pitmaster, and previous local leader serving his town as a finance committee chairman and selectman for over 13 years. So without further ado, let's get right into the top 10 ways that James would go about hacking your business.
Zoe, I want to say in true A-Networks fashion, we went over the top. We don't have a top 10. We have a top 11. So wonderful, wonderful job. James, we're going to go down from 1 through 11 or 11 through 1? Go backwards?
Whatever you want to do, let's do it.
Okay, let's go 11 through 1. So start out with 11. Go ahead, Zoe.
All right, number 11 is scams, extortion, and sextortion.
Talk about that, James. What is that?
Oof, yeah. So this is an interesting one, and you know, we get calls to our office all the time about stuff like this. And basically, what happened? There's a bunch of different things that happens, and I actually got a call from a guy. This was a couple weeks ago, and what happened was it was actually his son that was in trouble, and he was on one of those dating apps, right, Tinder or whatever, and he, you know, matches with this girl. They start messaging, you know, they start texting and doing all sorts of stuff. He ends up sending her some explicit pictures. And it turns out this wasn't actually a girl, it was a guy, some guy in India. After he sends them, he starts extorting him. He's like, hey, if you don't send me $5,000, I'm going to go on here's a picture of your Facebook. I got all your friends. Here's your LinkedIn. I know everyone. I know where you work. I know everything. If you don't send me $5,000, I'm going to start sending these pictures to everyone. So this kid freaks out, sends him $5,000. Turns out that they said they didn't get it. We want another $5,000. We didn't get it.
So 5,000 wasn't enough.
Oh no, it wasn't enough, right? It wasn't enough. So it's like, you know, and this is kind of the common scenario for all of these types of things, right? Once you prove to him or you show him that you're vulnerable and that you're willing to give money and you're going to give into these types of scams, they're going to keep bleeding you dry, right? So then he sends him another $5,000 through, you know, Venmo or some other app. I don't remember what one. But, you know, the kid was freaking out. The kid had a security clearance. He worked for a defense contractor. The guy knew that. So he was choosing them for every ounce of money he could get. And, you know, this isn't just a money thing, right? Sometimes they want data. Sometimes they want, you know, other things, personal information, right? They want to control their email account. You know, the list goes on and on there.
Yeah.
But, you know,
you also get those emails that say, you know, I've been watching you on your camera and we've been seeing what you've been doing. And we have video of you, and if you don't send us money right away, we're going to, you know, get this out to all your Facebook friends and everything like that.
Oh, dude,
I typically don't
bad.
respond to those, but I usually go, you know, when I usually get those, I usually do respond, and I say, please do send it out to all my Facebook friends. They'll get a great laugh out of it.
I've actually seen I've seen people, I've actually had friends on. So first we'll start from the beginning. Right? That's an incredibly common email. And I do a presentation and it covers that. We call it social media extortion or sextortion. And usually the title of that email is your password, right? So what they do is,
James, you're muted there. Go ahead.
oh, sorry. They'll go on a breach database. They'll look up a password. When they find your password, they send you an email and the title is your password. So, you know, most people, you're flipping through your inbox, right? You see an email where the title of it's a password that you use and you freak out. You read it. They establish legit.
James, you're muted again. Yeah, good.
Oh, okay.
Don't
you
mute,
muted?
just stay live. Just stay live. You're good.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're good. But yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And every time I do a presentation, I have a guy, at least one person that comes up to me and they say, you know, hey, I got that email and I paid the guy. What do I do? What do I do? They start freaking out, and you know, it's rough. But you know, for the breach password, if you get an email and the title of that email is your password, you know, there's a database. You can literally go to WeLeakInfo.to. You can sign up, you can log in, you can look up anyone's email, and in that email is going to be or in that database is going to be a password for you, for some email address you have. So it's public knowledge, right? This is even, we're not even talking about the dark web. It's on the internet. You can go to it, you can log in, you can get that data. So that's where they're getting it from, right? They're going to go in there, they're going to grab that from you. And, you know, if you don't know that password's out there, a lot of people freak out. A lot of people freak out.
Right. Sometimes you see ones like passwords that you haven't seen, they haven't used maybe in like 10 years too. And you go, do I have that still in use anywhere? You know?
Yep.
So number 10, Zoe, you're muted.
Number 10 is impersonation.
Got it.
Oof. So this is a big one. And, you know, even when we do, I mean, this goes hand in hand with phishing and some other stuff as well. But, people calling up places, right? Pretending to be the IRS, pretending to be Microsoft. I mean, I get those calls all the time on my cell phone. I'll be sitting here. I use Mac everything, literally. I use Microsoft Office, right? But I'll get a call from supposedly Microsoft saying that my computer's infected and they need to log in and do all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. The IRS, right? You get those calls all the time. You know, I'm a big fan of doing my own taxes. I like TurboTax. I like to, you know, mess with numbers, see what the return looks like, and then kind of go from there. You know, so not something you probably want to admit a whole lot of, but I'm guilty of it. And a couple of years ago, I actually made we'll call it a mistake, right? I made a mistake with that. And I had to call the IRS, and I was on hold for about 45 minutes. So they're probably not going to be calling you.
Yeah. IRS does not call you. And but it's funny, like, you know, it happens all the time where people get phone call. Hey, I'm from the IT department. We need to get on your computer. And people grant access to their computer and they're not from the IT department. They're actually a hacker trying to get access to the machine.
Yep. And that's actually something that we test a lot too. A lot of banks and financial institutions, they require some kind of testing like that. So we'll go on LinkedIn, we'll figure out who works in IT. They might use outsourced IT, you might find them out, then call up a user and just say, you know, hey, this is Bill from A Networks. You know, I need to start installing up there on your computer. Here's a script to run. And, you know, they'll do it, or, hey, run this command. And, you know, it's stuff hackers do all the time. I mean, it's, you know, they have call centers like Verizon has call centers and, you know, all sorts of corners of the world where this is a business. And that's one thing we always tell people. This isn't just one guy in a basement. This is a business, right? These people make money doing it. There's hundreds of people employed. There's call centers. They got, you know, phones, technology, headsets, anything that a normal call center would have. People show up to work at 8, they leave at 5. And this is a job for them. This is how they make money. This is how they feed their families, is doing scams and things like that.
Right. The 2020 Verizon data breach report says that the number one group of hackers now is organized crime. So a big chunk of everybody, this is organized crime. Now, what do you do? Like, okay, this guy calls me up on the phone saying there's something wrong with my computer. I'm the, you know, they think it sounds like they're from the IT department. What do you do? I mean,
yes. So, I mean, the main thing you want to do is, you know, you check the number, right? If the number isn't from that place, then that's step one. A lot of times they'll spoof it and it's from that. What I always do.
What does that mean, James? Just for everybody else, what's spoofing the number?
Yeah. So you can download an app really on any phone, right? So on your iPhone, there's one, I think I got it installed there now. It's called Spoof Card, and you literally download it from the App Store. You run it, and you can literally say, what number do you want to call? You enter the number and it says, what number do you want to show up on the caller ID? You can put anything you want. So I can call Bill and I can pretend to be Zoe. On Bill's caller ID, it will say Zoe is calling. When he answers that and hears my voice, he'll probably know I'm not Zoe. He'll be like, well, what the heck's going on here?
Right.
That's one way to find out, right? But what I always do is if someone calls me, if they're from IT, Verizon, whatever, I always hang up and call them back, because if I'm calling them back, that means that number is routing right to them. It's not being spoofed. It's directly going. Whereas if I'm trusting what my caller ID is telling me, there's some room for error there.
Right. That's a great point. Okay, number 9. Number 9 is phishing, vishing, pretexting.
So these are big. Phishing is.
I think we can have like a whole presentation on this. Could be an hour-long conversation.
Easily. Phishing, I mean, it's always, at least in the near future, going to be the number one way businesses get hacked. That's just the world we live in. And this is something we do professionally to test people to make sure that organizations are protected from phishing. But, attackers do it as well, right? And if we think about, hacking into a network, right? We think about guessing a password. Those take two things that attackers don't usually have, right? Time and effort. They don't have a lot of time. They want to just, the lowest hanging fruit. Effort, why would they spend, 15, 16 people trying to guess a password when they can just ask someone for the password? It's just much easier. So I always go back to a breach where, remember the Clinton Foundation, John Podesta's email was breached. How that was done was literally it was a hacking group out of Russia called Fancy Bear. All these guys did was they found John Podesta's personal Gmail account, like johnpodesta@gmail.com. They sent him an email. All the email said was, hey, this is Google security. Your account's been compromised. Click this link to reset your password. He clicks the link. It says, enter your current password to unlock your account. He enters it. He goes on with his day. That wasn't from Google. It was from, the hacking group. So they had his password. All they did was log into his Google account, download all his data. That literally takes, to do that, maybe 5 minutes, right? All you got to do is send him an email, hope he clicks on a link when he does, hope he enters his password when he does. I mean, you got everything you need.
Yeah. They say attackers prefer short pass and rarely attempt longer pass. So this means anything you can easily throw in their way to increase the number of actions they have to take is likely to significantly decrease their chance of absconding with data. And also they said that what most hackers are after now, based on the Verizon investigations report, is they're trying to get credentials. So the easier way they can get credentials, that's the way they're going. 80% is either brute force or trying to get your credentials.
Yep. Yeah. And when they're guessing those passwords, what attackers do, and really what we do, right, is we know, and attackers know, that most businesses use just 8-character passwords. So their dictionary list is usually only 8-character passwords. So if you say, all right, everyone has to use 10-character passwords, that defends you from most brute forcing attacks, because attackers are just going to spam, 8-character passwords across millions of organizations, and they don't really care. It's just, they know the dictionary list. It's nice and short for them. They're not going to increase it. And if they get in, they get in. So just by saying, hey, we're going to do 10, 12, I have some businesses that are doing 16-character passwords. I mean, just by having that length, you're protecting yourself immensely.
Yeah, because it just takes that much, the computer cycles that much longer to run through. Although computing technology and some of these major hacking organizations are, and if you're a high enough target, they're putting the CPU, they're putting the CPU time in to really dig in harder and try and get those passwords out, and get them broken.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we're seeing a lot of places using AWS now. So they're renting like huge GPU boxes in AWS by the hour, loading passwords in there. I mean, it's what we do too, right? It's just more cost effective. We can get, I think we got it's a 2 terabytes of RAM, some crazy GPU requirements or specs. And we just throw hashes in there and let that crack away at it, right? We don't have to have a server room with tons of boxes. We just use Amazon.
Yeah. What I mean, we know what vishing is. That's the phone call. What's pretexting?
So pretexting it's using an invented scenario to do something, right? So what I always explain it as is, when I was young, I grew up in a small town called Utica, New York, kind of between Syracuse and Albany. And, I was 18 years old. It'd be a Friday or Saturday night. And what we'd want to do is we want to buy alcohol. The issue being is that we're not 21, right? So we'd create an invented scenario to do so. What I mean by that is we'd find a gas station close to a construction site. I'd go in, I'd be dressed as a construction worker. I'd have, the jeans on, the Timberland boots, the vest, the dirt all over me. And, I'd try to buy alcohol. And my whole scheme there was like, hey, I work at the construction site. I don't carry my wallet. All I have is cash. I've lost it so many times. Can you help me out? Right. And 9 times out of 10 it work. Pro tip though, anyone listening, it can't be, the Sunoco's, the Sitkos. It's got to be like the sketchy ones, right? Like the red, I don't know what the sketchy ones, over by Boston are, but like the Red Apples in New York, right? We got the Valeros, right? Those ones you're gonna be pretty good at. But the big chain ones, if it's on an Indian reservation, forget it. Don't even try it. You're gonna get hosed every single time. So don't do that. But I mean, that's really what it is. It's pretending to be somewhere, just creating a scenario where, the percent or the chance of you getting a yes or getting what you wanted is pretty high.
Or, and that same then, I'm from the IT department. Let me get on your computer. Hey, I'm from Microsoft. I need to fix your computer. We were getting some alerts, all that like that. So.
Yep.
Awesome. So what about tailgating? What is tailgating?
So tailgating it's how you physically gain access to buildings. We see this happen all the time. We test this all the time. It's basically what it sounds, right? So let's say I show up at, Lockheed Martin, for example. I want to get into the building. All I do, I sit in the parking lot. I wait for someone to go in. When they have the door open, I grab it behind them and I walk right in behind them. Typically when we do this, and it's always really interesting to find, is we'll try it with fake badges, right? So we'll make literally it's just ink on plastic. It doesn't scan, doesn't do anything, but people see a badge and they automatically think, hey, this guy belongs here. A badge goes a long way, and for whatever reason, a badge has a lot of authority as well. And typically how attackers forge these badges and how we forge these badges is social media. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, right? If someone says they work at Lockheed Martin and I go on Twitter and I go on Instagram and I put in the location of the business and I see people taking selfies, a lot of times, and this is with college grads, when college grads get their first job, what they love to do is they take a picture of their badge, say, hey, I just graduated from UMass, I just got this great job, first day, it's awesome. Or when people leave their job, when they leave their job, they'll take a picture of their badge and be like, oh, I've had such a good time working for, Cisco. I'm going to miss all my employees. And they tag the location where they worked. So attackers go in there, they see that badge, I go, boom, now I know what that badge looks like. I even might have the name of an employee when they started working there, right? If they have something on their desk, that might give away a project they're working on. Even what the lanyards look like, if they have uniforms, if they have polos, anything, right? Yep. Then you can go on their Instagram profile. If they take pictures of cubicles or office areas, now we got what the business looks like, what the inside looks like. So when someone or an attacker gets in, they kind of know the lay of the land. They know where things have been.
Now, what would you do when you got in there? I mean, okay, great. You got into the building. Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of where the fun part is, right? You get in and it's like, all right, now what, right? Usually you pretend to be an employee. So you walk around. We've done things like pretended to be IT, handed out flash drives that had malware on them. We literally walk into the building with a box of flash drives and, like, hey, we're IT. This is a new secure way to distribute data or encrypt documents. You got to plug this flash drive in and activate it. They plug that thing in. They're infected. We've gone in places and literally stole servers. So we've gone into a server room, taken a server off a rack, taken computers, opened up filing cabinets. We've gone in as like Iron Mountain before, the shredding company, and taken all the documents that they wanted shredded. And you name it. But that's what you're after, right? You're after either compromising that network or compromising sensitive data, or both, if you can do both at the same time.
Tell about that last one where you did the USB drop and put the logo on it, and what happened.
Oh yeah, that was bad. So this was a customer. They're in a rural part of New York, and what we ended up doing was we printed up, it was about 1,000 flash drives, and we broke in. How we broke in was we essentially just went on social media, found what the badges looked like, because people love taking selfies at work, right? So when they're not working, they're taking selfies. That's what you learn. And we found what those badges looked like. We tailgated an employee in. We actually had video footage of him letting us in. And when you look back at it, he actually scans his badge, opens the door, looks back at our badges, like literally his eyes make contact with our badges. And it's like, oh, they must be good. Lets us in. what we started doing is just start handing out these flash drives. And what we did is we branded the flash drive with their logo on it. So it looked like it was something they used, right? It had their logo on it. It was their colors. It looked great. So we had fish bowls of these. We're handing them out. We're leaving them places. Everything was going great. People were plugging them in. We were hacking them. All was fine. They were plugging them into like.
Well, just to pause the story. What happens when they plug it in? What's the back end? What happens there?
So when they plug it in, it asks them to register. They got to run a file. When they run that file, it connects back to our machine. We technically hack the network that way.
Yeah. So now you have access to that machine.
Now you have access to the machine. Yeah. And I mean, we're talking, they're plugging them into workstations. They had these crazy like automated welding machines that they're like robotic welders. This is a big manufacturing company. So I mean, we had access to those things. I mean, if that thing goes haywire, you could take out an eye or even worse, right?
Yep. Okay. So you got in there, the people are plugging the things in.
Yep. They're plugging them in. Engagement's over. It's all good. About a month after, I get an email every time someone plugs it in, and I'm getting tons and tons of emails all over Las Vegas. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? And I see they're plugging these things in again. I'm like, why is there suddenly a spike? So I call my guy at the company. I'm like, hey man, just want to let you know, I'm seeing a lot of these things getting plugged in Vegas. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, oh God. I'm like, what's wrong? It's like, dude, marketing must have took him to the trade show and they started handing him out as marketing material. So as marketing swag, right? So they see these cool flash drives and fish bowls with their logos on. Like, this is gonna be perfect to hand out at our trade show, right? Go to the trade show, hand them out to people. People are plugging them in, running them. They're taking them home. They're giving them to family members. I mean, they're going back to their business and plugging those things in. And man, it was a bad scene. It was a bad scene.
That almost sounds like a reverse hack. If somebody wanted to hack you, go swing by the booth and find the company they want to target, replace all their USB drives with the ones that are compromised.
Yeah, that's an idea. That's an idea for sure.
I don't give them bad ideas to hackers, so we don't do that.
But that just goes to show you, right? If you back in the day when flash drives were like kind of a rarity, right? When I think it was like a 256 meg flash drive, like $100, right? People went crazy for flash drives. Nowadays, I mean, they crank those things out like Doritos. It's like less than $1 for like a 10 gig flash drive. But if you get one, right, even if you go to a trade show and you get one, what we always tell people is, bring it to IT, have them wipe it, and then go ahead and use it.
Right. Next one, number 7 is social media.
Yeah, and this is large with college grads as well, right? With the millennial, and I fall in that category as well, but the millennial generation, right? And they post a lot of stuff on social media, and when we're tasked to break into a company, a lot of times it's through hey, do open source intelligence gathering, gather as much data about the company, but not just that, the employees of the company, and try to get in that way. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll mine stuff that common security questions are. So we'll try to log into, let's say an email service. We try to log in. It says reset your password. To reset your password, you have to answer 2 or 3 questions, right? And the questions are always like, what was the name of your favorite pet? What's the name of your favorite sports team? What was the color of your first car, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking like, a 21, 22-year-old college grad who's been on social media, 2/3 of their life. That information's probably on there. Mm-hmm. So when we see stuff like that, when attackers see stuff like that, it's a gold mine, because that means, hey, I can go on social media, I can go on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, and probably find that. And actually, last year we did a job for a company in Florida, and we literally hacked the entire network through social media. There was a lady, she was actually a young girl that worked there, and her 2 questions I'll never forget. It was, what's the name of your favorite pet? What's the name of your favorite sports team? And I went on her social media, and I think it was about the 10th picture down. It was a picture of her dog in an Alabama football jersey. And the caption of it was like, hanging out with my pal Duke, #Roll Tide. And they answered 2 of the 3 questions in one picture. It was like, favorite sports team, Alabama, favorite pet, Duke. You put it in, you reset the password, and you're good, right? In one picture. Yeah.
So the best way to secure against that is when they ask those questions, don't put in anything related to it. So favorite pet is some other random characters, whatever. You save that in your password manager so you know what it is. But it's just another like password, random character generated password, and you can use the same thing over and over and over on all the answers, because at the end of the day, it's all gibberish. You can never find it. So that prevents that type of hack.
Definitely.
Yeah. Number 6, bad patching practices.
Yep. So, this is less common in social engineering. We still find stuff like this all the time, and we still get in networks. Even on an internal network, we can gain access to servers doing this all day long. I mean, when we talk about bad patching, it's basically Microsoft patching. So, if you have a patch management system, a lot of people say, yeah, we have patch management. We patch all our machines. We do it every Wednesday. A lot of places don't check. They don't check to see if they fail. They don't check to see if it's patching. They don't do a vulnerability scan to see, hey, is it missing something? Is it missing a specific piece of software? How good is our patching? And a lot of times, once you get inside that network, the next thing you're going to look for is vulnerable machines, right? You got access now. It's like, boom, I'm in the network. How do I get access to more machines, more servers? How do I get more privileged data? A lot of times they do that through exploiting those types of vulnerabilities. And the biggest ones we see right now are one that's called, it's MS-17010. It's it was the WannaCry ransomware vulnerability, right? That ran rampant. A lot of organizations we test still don't have their systems patched from that, and they still don't know they don't have their systems patched from that, right? You ask them, you ask IT, they're going to tell you every time, yeah, we patched that. We patched that the week it came out, and it failed on half of the machines, but no one ever tested it.
Right.
So you go in, and I mean, once you get access to that, you're admin, and the cards fall pretty quickly from there,
Yeah. It's all about inspecting what you expect, right? So if you expect your patch management system is doing its job, then you should have a function in there to be able to inspect the patch management system and making and verifying that it's doing its job. And one of the practices we do a lot is we do a vulnerability scan today. We have a list of things that may need to be fixed or patched, and then 30 days out, we're going to do the same exact scan. And anything that is still there, now that's when the red flags are starting to go up. This patch has not been fixed within the last 30 days. This is a security problem for us. So some companies those windows are even smaller, but quickly identifying and remediating those security vulnerabilities is super important. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. And then a lot of customers, you'll walk in and you'll scan it, and this is really common in healthcare and big hospitals, right? You'll do a test on the network, and it's like, you have, a quarter of your network hasn't been updated in 15 years. Like, what's going on? Like, well, it runs like, an MRI system that, to replace it's $500,000. We have the money for that. It's like, well, a lot of people just say, okay, well, just, yeah, it's old. Yeah, we can't update it. And they accept that. And that's when you got to think about compensating controls, right? So what more can you do, or what can you do alternatively to protect those systems? Can you segment the network? Can you install next-gen antivirus? Can you, monitor it closer with a SIM or be more granular on that? And, it's not just all about patching and, hey, if I can't patch, it is what it is. No, that's where you got to say, all right, what can we do to protect these systems even though we can't patch them?
Yeah, again, adding those layers, right? So layers of security, and even though that system may be super vulnerable and it may have to stay that way, if there's layers of security, it makes it harder for somebody like James to get in. He's gonna get bored by it and go, yeah, I got to find an easier target. This is taking me way too much time.
Yep, exactly what I do.
Right. So next one, number 5 is poor configurations, firewall, same IDS, IPS.
Yep.
Misconfiguration, basically.
So what we see there a lot of times is firewalls that are missing patches. The big one there is recently there was Fortinet released a big patch. And
Fortinet's a firewall manufacturer. I think Switch too, right?
Yep. They do a bunch of stuff. They do some SIM stuff as well. Basically, if you don't install the patch, anyone on the internet can just use a web browser and get the admin password for the firewall and for all the users. It's actually kind of crazy how easy it is. And so, without that, right, an attacker can literally just go to your webpage where you log into your firewall, your VPN, or your remote access, grab a password, log in, and you're compromised from there.
Right.
And, a lot of times what we also see is that places aren't, they're not configuring their firewall or restricting access properly. So, a lot of times, even now, you see all these apps moving to the cloud, right? You might have, your webmail hosted on-prem, but you want to do Outlook or G Suite, so you move it to the cloud. What a lot of people don't do is they don't close off those ports or close off those services. So it's like, yeah, we're great, we updated to this new secure service, but you don't close off your old service. So that thing's just getting left by the wayside, right, for years and years and years. And then all you got to wait for is a vulnerability come out or a hacker able to guess a password or exploit it, and it's over. Yeah,
and you really got to take all those external virus. Anything touches the touches the outside of the world, you really need to be doing some extra testing around that and making sure that it's running under. There's a bunch of services out there you can do that actually takes that device and the configuration of the device and measures against best practices and the best configuration. And then all you got to do is compare it to and go, you need to do these things on this firewall to make it more secure. And having your ports and your IPs really locked down. You know, if you're using Office 360 or you have a connection to somebody, make sure it's locked down to those IPs and those ports, not open to everybody in the world that somebody like James can go in and exploit, right? You talked about a SIM. What's a SIM?
Yeah, so what it does, it allows you to aggregate or kind of combine events and logs, right? So a lot of times we see that, you know, your AV might be giving off alerts, and your firewall might be giving off alerts, and, you know, maybe Windows alert and event management's getting off alerts. Well, what a SIM allows you to do, allows you to kind of aggregate all that in one place, and then go through it, determine what's important, what's not important, filter out the noise, and then tell you what's wrong or what might be malicious.
Yep.
What we find a lot of times, and, you know, people, you know, a lot of times it's like, you know, they might be checking a box. Like, do you have a SIM? Boom, they check the box. Do they ever configure it? Probably not.
No.
Yeah.
Have you looked at the logs? No.
Yeah. Do they tell when you find you're getting hacked? Does it tell anyone? No, we just have it. It doesn't really do anything. You know?
Yeah, but I have it. I could check the box.
Yeah. It's like having a security camera that you know, there's no feed, you know, that doesn't record anything. There's no alert. It's like,
but it's up there in the corner, and it, you know, the light's on, the green light's on.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So and that's real good too. If you're trying to figure out what's going on with the network, you can actually step by step look through the logs. I mean, we log everything, like all our workstations, all our servers, firewall, switches, every device that plugs into our network is all those logs are getting correlated, so that if an event did happen that we didn't know what was going on, we can actually see exactly what happened. And when James gets into my network and he's trying to hack me, I can see exactly what he did and how he did it. So that's your and then if we got to remediate that or report on that, we have the data. We know exactly what happened. So
yeah, and that's super, super helpful when doing like forensic investigations too, right? So if someone does get hacked, they call us up, we come in like, all right, what happened? Like, well, we don't know. Like, all right, where are your logs? We don't have logs. We don't have a SIM. We don't have anything. You know,
so how do you do forensics then? You don't, right?
It's tough, right? Pretty much what you got to do at that point is you got to start monitoring. So it's like, all right, well, they're probably still inside the network. Then you got to put in an appliance that monitors what's going on, detect it that way. You know, there's really no way of knowing what happened, what data left the network. And depending on who you ask, right, some people are like, oh, it's a blessing because, you know, I don't have, you know, I can't prove that customer data left my network, so I don't have to report. I'm like, that's definitely one way to look at it. If you, you know, if you want to.
The other way is you got to assume that everything is gone and everything's left the network, and I got to report on that and then pay the penalties and fees against that, especially if it's HIPAA. That's super expensive.
Yeah, that's usually the case.
Yeah. Number 4, weak endpoint security, antivirus, anti-malware.
Yeah, I mean, and this is something, you know, before it was a suggestion, now it's like almost a requirement when we do a test. You know, traditional AV, we're talking about like antivirus that's signature based. So what I mean by that is what happens is when you're like browsing the web or you get an email attachment, let's say you download a file and a Word document, right? What your antivirus does, it scans that file and then compares that file with files in its database that's known to be malicious, right? Mm-hmm. So it takes that file, compares, and says, "Oh, this, you know, this isn't in our database. It must be good." Mm-hmm. Right? What new or next gen antivirus does is it's behavior based. So it'll actually run it. A lot of times it does it in a sandbox, sees what it's doing, sees if it's malicious. Let's say you run the file and the file all of a sudden starts making all these administrative commands, right? And your antivirus says, wait, you know, Lindsay normally doesn't do that. You know, she's never made these commands in her 4 years of working here. So something must be going on. What happened? It quarantines that file, it deletes that file. So it's more behavior based, which what we find is a lot more protective, especially towards malware that what we call is fileless. So if we get on a machine, a lot of times, and hackers, what they'll do is they don't use files anymore. They just run commands in memory. So the behavior-based one says, hey, this behavior that's going on, these commands are being run, they're not normal, and they block it.
Mm-hmm. So your first thing you're gonna do when you get onto that system is try and turn that AV off, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. And
so how do I stop you from doing that?
Yeah, so that's a great question because a lot of times, I'll go in a network and they're using, Cylance or Carbon Black or Intercept X, or they're using the latest and greatest AV, which is great. And I'm like, that's going to make life hard. But then all I do is I right click on it and hit disable, and then it's over. So what you can do to protect against that is most, if not all, antiviruses have a setting where only a system admin can disable it. It's centrally protected, right? So you have to have the admin password to disable it. It's not your password. It's an administrative password. When you enter that, you're going to disable it for a machine. A lot of times you can't even do it from the machine. You got to log into like the cloud
Console,
app,
cloud
or
console.
the console, yeah, and just didn't do it that way.
Yep, great. Good stuff. Okay, number 3 is uneducated employee, no cybersecurity awareness training.
Yep. So, and this is something, in the last 3-4 years has really picked up for us, and the requests have been picked up for us just because it's a requirement now for a lot of financial institutions, for a lot of compliance frameworks, even for, a lot of cybersecurity frameworks. And, educating employees is going to be, if someone asks me what's the most important thing I can do, educating employees is up there. The reason for that is, phishing, social engineering, bad passwords. At the end of the day, it does come down to IT, but it also comes down to employees. It's a shared responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to make sure, and what you guys got to make sure you do, is make sure employees are up to date on all the threats that are out there, right? What's a phishing email look like? How do you detect a phishing email? What can you do if you see a phishing email? What's the protocol? Do you alert IT? Do you use there a button to report the email?
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that, and what I always say, it's like when you're growing up, right? You always had, I know I did, when I think it was always like a fire protocol, right? If there's a fire, we'd all leave out of this door, we'd meet by a tree, right? It should be the same thing for employee awareness. If there's a phish, right? You should have a protocol that's followed so that, hey, if this does happen, everyone's on board, everyone knows what to do, it gets reported here, they know what to do. It's a fire drill at that point.
Right. Yeah, the people that subscribe to our phishing, our cybersecurity awareness training, what we typically find is before we even start the training, we phish them. So on the initial phish, I've seen it as low as 35% of the people clicking on it. I've seen it as high as 75% of the people are clicking on the email. I mean, if I have a 100-person firm, 75%, that's 75 freaking people just clicked on something they shouldn't be clicking on. And of those 75 people, usually 25 of them have actually clicked on the link inside the email. So crazy numbers. And what we're able to do with our cybersecurity awareness training, and I'm sure a lot of different programs, not just ours, you're able to reduce that potential of them just opening it is down to 3.5% in 1 year. I mean, it's an amazingly inexpensive way to secure your network.
Yeah,
and it's our number 3 too.
Yeah, no, it really is, and we've done phishing engagements where we're sending out tens of thousands of emails, and one I'll never forget, I sent it out, and almost immediately when they click on the email, the link, it goes to our website. Our website crashed. I'm like, what the heck's going on? I thought it was an error. What happened was it was actually getting overloaded with traffic. So many people were clicking on the link, it crashed the website.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts.
That's amazing. Okay, moving on. We got to move. Compliance over security, number 2.
So it's something I always say. A lot of companies, they're too worried about being compliant and not worried enough about being secure. And one of the big things with that is, like password policies, right? I do work for a lot of PCI companies. They got to adhere to the PCI DSS, which is it's a standard if you do credit card transactions and stuff like that.
Right.
And, there's a lot of pushback, right? Like, hey, you really need to go 12-character passwords. You can use passphrases. Like, James, you're right. I agree with you. That's awesome. All this is great stuff. But PCI says we only have to have 8-character passwords, so we're only doing that. And that's one of those things we just walk away scratching your head, right? It's like, well, we both agreed that to be secure, you need to do this, but you've chosen to be compliant, which is far less secure, right? And I mean, if I had $1 for every compliant password policy was part of a breach, I wouldn't be on this webinar right now. Like, well, 8 characters. Well, that's what HIPAA says. That's what the FDIC says. So NYDFS says. It's like, okay, there's compliance and then there's secure. Which one do you want to be? And how did that one work out for you?
Right. Yeah, and a lot of those standards are really, even HIPAA. HIPAA needs to be updated. The HIPAA policies are just So they're so 10, 15 years ago. And you talk to experts like yourself or me, we're saying 12 characters, complex characters, even higher, 18. Using a password manager, it can be 50 characters. Who cares? You're copy and pasting anyway. It's just silly, just not, and all I'm doing just on the password side is making your job harder. And that leads us really to number one, which is poor password policies. Talk about that.
Yeah. And this has really escalated pretty bad. A lot of times when we're doing a breach, or doing forensics, if it's not phishing related, it's usually password related or bad password policy related. And, a lot of times 8-character passwords, that's the weakest link. A lot of times, and hospitals are really bad on this. I did one hospital, I'll never forget it. And I go in and I'm looking at these passwords, and the passwords are like cat, dog, Jake, like all lowercase. Like, what the heck's going on here? This hospital's been around for 80, 90 years. They've had HIPAA audits done. They've had experts in there doing stuff. Like, oh yeah, our password policy is any character works. Really, you don't even need to have a password. What do you mean? Like, try it, and you can make an account with no password, and it would work. And you'd log into. I logged into. When I was doing the engagement, the head of legal's email account using DOG as the password hasn't been changed in 15 years. It's been the same password. And in there was every single lawsuit with all of the case details against the hospital.
Wow.
And that's what we're seeing a lot of, getting into webmail, getting into a VPN, getting into RDP, which is pretty much a nice, easy, GUI graphical user interface way to access a server from the outside. We're finding that happens a lot because of bad passwords and because of what we call password reuse, which is also using the same password for multiple things, right?
Yep.
So if you're using, Fluffy 20 for LinkedIn, and LinkedIn gets breached and that password's out there, but you're also using it for your bank account and your work, and attackers going to see that password. And one thing we know about users is that they like to use the same password for everything, right?
Yep.
And if it's not the same password, it's Fluffy 21, Fluffy 22, Fluffy 23, right? It just changes a little bit. So attackers, we're not dumb. We know that. We know that you like to use the same password or a very slight variation of it. So we start guessing that, and more times than not, we get in by just changing a number or changing a character.
Well, yeah. And talk about multi-factor authentication. I mean, what's that doing to you? How's that making your job a little bit more difficult?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think a lot more difficult is a better term for that. But multi-factor authentication is really what everything should have right now, and what it is. And you guys probably have it on like bank accounts and stuff like that, because I think most banks right now.
Yeah, that's when they text you, right?
Yep, it's when they text you. So you'll log in with a password, it texts you a code. You go on your computer or whatever, and you enter the code in, and then allows you access. That does a couple things, right? It proves that you know something, which is your password, but then it also proves that you have something, which is your phone, right? So those are the two factors there. It makes it much more secure because, if I'm some guy in Russia and I guess your password and I get it right, but then it texts you a code, I don't have your phone, so I can't get that code. Unless, of course, I text you and say, hey, what's that code? And you text me back. And if you do that, we got bigger problems.
Hey,
right?
I'm from IT. I need your code.
yeah. Hey, give me that code. Yeah. Never give everyone your password, and never give anyone that code.
Right,
If someone's asking for that
if you got to remember one thing from this webinar, don't give out your password, and don't ever give anybody that code.
Yeah, if they text you, it's in broken Russian, asking for a code, and you give it to them. I mean, something else should happen to you.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Is there any questions? I don't see any open questions right this second. Anybody have any questions? Just go ahead and fire it in the chat. We'll wait a minute and see what we have.
Cool.
Okay. Zoe must have lost her internet connection. I think she had a little problem earlier. So I think I'm going to have to wrap this up myself. So I think I can do that. So, all right, everyone, that's about all the time we have today. I hope you enjoyed this webinar and found the information valuable. I'll be sending Zoe will be sending out a follow-up email that lists out the top 10 ways James would hack into your network, as well as additional resources, including information on our penetration testing services. If you enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss any upcoming webinars. And finally, if securing your systems is a priority for your business and you would like to continue this conversation, feel free to call us directly at 855-459-6600. Visit us on the web at anetworks.com or email me directly. And actually, you're going to be emailing Zoe. So Zoe, ZOE, at anetworks.net. Thanks. Thanks, James.
Cool.
Awesome
Thank you.
job.
Thanks,
I think we're
everyone.
going to be doing more of these. So awesome job, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Okay, see ya.